Today, I welcome all of you participants, ladies and gentlemen, for this event, which is actually a report launch titled Decentralized Solar Refrigeration Opportunities in the Livelihood Appliances Market in India. The report was commissioned by GOGLA. It was implemented on ground by Intellecap and with the support of ICC, Indian Chamber of Commerce, which is on the two keywords to sort of underline here are decentralized solar and livelihood, because this makes it very topical, and hence the whole report becomes very interesting and relevant. The format in which it will be delivered to you today is with the opening remarks, and then we have a important dignitary from the industry to kind of make the keynote address, which will be followed by a presentation by Intellecap on the highlights from the report. And then, of course, we'll have a panel discussion or discussion with some very eminent personalities from the industries, from various sectors, from the manufacturing side, from the end user side, and from the development sector, people who are working in the sector closely with the stakeholders. So that will be the panel discussion, and then of course there'll be question and answers, and then we'll close the event for the day. For those who are not too kind of familiar with GOGLA's work here, GOGLA is an industry association. It's a global industry association, and it works for the off-grid solar energy sector. It came into being in 2012 and is an independent, neutral, and not-for-profit organization working towards building of sustainable markets and profitable businesses, delivering high quality and products to the market, and of course affordable products also. So that's what we do. GOGLA brings global knowledge and practices to the markets where we work in, for example, in India, but we always work in close collaboration with the local governments and like-minded organizations who are working in the sector. Now, if you note, participants, in terms of the sale and the markets for small lanterns and solar home systems, although the sale has come down, especially in countries like India, where we have close to 100% grid electrification now, it is very noteworthy to please take a note kind of the importance of this still, because India and the region is the second largest market globally for these kind of products, second only to East Africa. So it still remains a very, very significant cause for which GOGLA is working. But we also recognize that besides this particular product category, we have to champion the cause that the members, the members and the customer from the decentralized energy sector kind of look forward to. And of course, one of them is this whole area of decentralized energy solutions, and especially in the kind of livelihood / agriculture / SME space. And as I said, the underlining kind of words were decentralized and livelihood. And hence, we bring to you, ladies and gentlemen, this report on a decentralized solar refrigeration. Now, on behalf of GOGLA, I would request Koen Peters, who is our executive director, to kind of welcome all of you and then to kickstart the proceedings for the day. Koen, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Praveen, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. It's an immense joy to greet you from Amsterdam. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person in India, but I think this works well. We're organizing this webinar together with Intellecap and with the India Chamber of Commerce, and we are very happy with their participation. And what we want to do here is, as Praveen said, launch the study on decentralized solar refrigeration. We're very glad to have Mr. J.K. Jaitani here to introduce after me and set the scene, and then to dive deep into the findings of the report, presenting what we learned. We commissioned this study basically for two reasons. One is the state of where the Indian market is in right now, where in a short space of a few years, India has, as Praveen mentioned, reached almost universal energy access for households. And that was traditionally the space where the off-grid solar industry said, let us help governments here and societies with reaching energy access. We think that doesn't mean that all the energy needs of society have already been addressed, or that the role of off-grid and decentralized solar has vanished. But it does mean that we need to look closer at what are the next steps for the industry, and where shall we move, and where can companies in this space focus on. So I hope that this is going to give companies listening in information on where there's a need to be addressed and services to be provided. Secondly, also in Africa, our other main market, we observe that there's a lot of discussion going on what is needed beyond energy. How, if we provide electricity to households and to businesses and to farmers, how are they going to make use of it? What are the appliances that they need? How do they turn that into useful services? A stark reminder, of course, has been the recent developments around COVID and vaccination, and the clear need to have real cold chains for bringing vaccines to people everywhere, where we think that the decentralized solar industry can play an important role. And the study, as you will see, will look at this healthcare sector, but also at the agriculture sector, dairy sector, SME sector, and households, and try to segment for each of those, where are the needs and how can markets help address those needs. And we hope that this is also going to be of good use for the government to develop their policies in such a way that there's a good cooperation between private sector and the public sector on addressing all societal needs. The important element that also stuck in my mind ever since we started an India program is that we see India not just as the second largest market for decentralized solar, we also see it as a potential big player in manufacturing equipment and leading technology innovation. And a bit to my disappointment, this has never really been materialized so far. And I think there's a great opportunity for India to step up here and become more of a leader in providing the technologies that also Africa and other countries need in the future. With that, I'll give it back to you, Praveen, but this is where we are talking about. I hope you take great interest in the presentation and in the reports that will be distributed during and after this webinar. Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you so much, Koen, for kind of setting the context and to the great start to hopefully a great event today, which is, as I said, is topical and of use to most of the stakeholders. Now, I would invite the speaker for delivering the keynote address, but kindly allow me to read a few lines, because there is a great deal that we can talk about the speaker for the date to deliver the keynote address. He's an electrical engineer with PG Diploma in Infrastructure Management and is a certified energy auditor in the power sector. He has worked extensively in the power sector, for example, with the Rajasthan power sector companies in Delhi, coordinating with central and other agencies. Currently, he is with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energies, Government of India since 2011, and is associated for formulation of policies and regulations related to renewable energy, preparation of the framework, national solar mission, the importance of rooftop solar, implementation of rooftop solar and off-grid solar, PV and thermal applications, and the formulation of the PM Kusum scheme. And we know, I mean, the list goes on. So it's a great degree and a body of work. He's also the executive director for Association of Renewable Energy Agencies and sort of revived areas, as we call it. So it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome the keynote address speaker for the day, Mr. J.K. Jethani. Kindly come and please sort of enlighten us with your remarks. Thank you so much, Mr. Jethani.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen. I think I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, namaskar and good morning to Mr. Koen. I think he's joining from Amsterdam. So I'm thankful to GOGLA for inviting me during the launch of the market report on this market study of off-grid solar refrigeration in India. So friends, I'm not going to talk about this report because I think there is a panel discussion and a presentation on the outcome of this report. So what we talk about, what we are doing in India regarding this off-grid, or we say decentralized renewable energy solutions. So energy is required for everything. And under this Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations, equitable access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all is one of the important goal. And India has already taken a big step to provide access to electricity to all households. As Praveen has said that almost all over India, the grid is available. So on Independence Day in the year 2015, our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, announced electrification of all remaining villages within 1,000 days. And we completed this electrification of villages prior to 1,000 days. And on 28th of April 2018, all villages of India were declared electrified. And out of them, around 3,000 villages were electrified through decentralized renewable energy resources, mainly solar. And then in October 17, another initiative was taken by the government to provide access to electricity to all households. So under Saubhagya scheme, all billing households were provided with access to electricity by 31st March 2019. So far we have around 214 million households that are electrified, and barring a few thousand are yet to be electrified because it's a regular process. Of course, we have already electrified all the villages, households, but the reliable supply of electricity is still a challenge. I'm getting in MNRE, this Ministry of New and University, I'm dealing with the off-grid scheme, wherein we are also providing solar power packs for the public institutions with a subsidy. And here I'm getting a proposal from, particularly from the northeastern area and the remote areas, where they say the supply is not reliable. Sometimes there is a storm or there is snowfall or something like that. The supply is cut sometimes for 15 days. So you see that surviving without electricity, we can't afford. And for economic development, it's reliable and affordable electricity supply is a pre-requirement. So among 34 million rural micro entrepreneurs in India, about 14% have mentioned that the lack of reliable electricity is the biggest bottleneck for their business. So here we can see the market for off-grid DRE solutions. And friends, because of this lack of electricity, we are losing a perishable produce worth of million of Indian rupees because we are not getting adequate cooling, processing, and other storage facilities. So here that I will say that the DRE solutions can play a transformative role in this regard. And in recent years, what we have seen that the DRE solutions, be it solar, biomass, biogas, these solutions being highly energy efficient and are economically viable. The Center for Energy, Environment and Waters, their research shows a market of more than 3.5 lakh crore awaits the clean energy solutions to power livelihood in rural India. In the current times, due to COVID-19, most of the migrant laborers have gone back to their villages, and they are looking for an opportunity for the economic activities in their villages itself. And DRE powered solutions can provide a unique way to enhance the jobs, growth opportunities in a resilient way. You must be aware that our Prime Minister has also declared to make our country self-reliant. So it's under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. And also vocal for local. So under this Abhiyan, we have felt a need to promote the DRE solutions. So there are various sectors such as micro, mini micro enterprises, farm gate infrastructure, micro food enterprises, and agriculture and allied activities. But still there are certain challenges. DRE being an emerging sector, it lacks a commercial deployment at scale. There is a limit there's a lack of confidence among the investor when they want to support such kind of solution. So there is a lack of awareness also among the consumers that limits their demand aggregation for such solutions. So presently we have only a handful of applications which is deployed at a significant scale. Given the lack of support to such solutions, these solutions mainly are solar pumps, then DRE powered cold storages, and refrigerators, as you are going to launch this report. Solar dryers, solar silk reeling machines, solar spinning, like we say, solar charkha and looms, solar swing machines, solar IT kiosks, like this. These are the mainly solutions which are deployed at a larger scales. So we understand all these requirements, and now we are working on a policy to promote DRE based livelihood applications. And our guiding principles are the equitable market. When we say equitable market, it means we are going to support the socio-economic weaker sections. Then public financing, we leverage the public resources to de-risk and attract larger private investment. We are going to provide performance-linked incentives so that the high-quality products or the products which are going to work for the long term. Then innovation and entrepreneurship. So it is required, as Mr. Kohn said, that the India can be a global market leader in this area. So we are going to promote innovation and entrepreneurship. Then there are different sectors. When I say sectors, it means textile sector is there, the food sector is there, agriculture sector is there. These, and then rural development. These sectors can be integrated, and a solution may be provided for. Another guiding principle could be the gender inclusive livelihood promotion. So we are ensuring that the gender inclusive approach in all forms of sectoral support. And our major thrust area for this policy is financing and incentivizing. So given the high upfront cost of this solution, financing is a critical enabler for the large scale adoption of DRE solutions. And financial support mechanism could be, like I said, that performance-based incentives, equity support we can give, or credit risk guarantee mechanism. Another thrust area could be innovation and market development. So, as I said, the DRE solution is still at a nascent stage, and it needs much more innovation, both in product as well as in business models. So we can bring out some innovation challenges series, which can focus on energy efficient livelihood solutions, incubation and pilot support for DRE, equity funding, as I said, for this financing incentive, Then awareness. Awareness is another important area which is required, where the DRE solution, which can be piloted, given the technology demonstration can be given. Sectoral integration, I have already discussed. So these are the points which wherein we are working, and we are also focusing on the standardization, quality control, monitoring, then providing the O&M services. If you're not providing the proper O&M services on time, so people will not have faith on such kind of DRE solutions. So friends, this is all from my side, and I once again thank GOGLA for giving me this opportunity to present my views. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Jethani. This was all, I think, music to our ears as well as of all the stakeholders who are listening in, because I mean, you almost kind of laid down all the various inputs that are required for successful sort of scaling up of the sector and of this particular category. We can assure you on behalf of GOGLA that we'll try our best. As we said, we bring in global knowledge and practices, but we also try and do whatever best we can in collaboration with the local government and, of course, the like-minded associations and organizations, which we'll do going forward. And we'll keep coming to you, Mr. Jethani, to sort of seek your support and guidance to do whatever we can in the sector. So thank you so much for your remarks. I would just now like to request you to kindly kind of officially and formally announce the launching of the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen. And now I announce the launch of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Jethani. So the report is officially launched now. And as we do it all the time, ladies and gentlemen, this report will be available online and through various channels that we'll come back to you with. So thank you, Laura, for displaying the report. And thank you, Mr. Jethani, once again for being with us and for launching the report. It is such a pleasure, and we'll keep coming back to you, as I said. So but now we move forward with the deliberations of the day. And to give you all a snapshot and a quick sort of sneak peek into the report and the key highlights of the report, I would now welcome Mr. Ankit Gupta from Intellecap, who have kind of toiled in for several months and put in a lot of hard work to bring to you the report that you will be seeing online now. So Ankit, over to you to present the report, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Praveen. Thank you so much, Koon and Mr. Jethani, to share the kind words and launch the report officially. I'll take all of you through the key findings, three insights of the report that we have gathered over a period of time, and would quickly try to summarize key findings. So the objective of the study was to assess the market potential, including technology and applications of off-grid solar refrigerator across 5 segments. We identified these segments because we believe that these segments offer a lot of opportunity in terms of income potential to households, micro enterprises. Farm gate and dairy, obviously the farmers are a lot of opportunity for them in terms of the lot of wastage, as well as if you see India is the largest producer of milk. So we definitely want to support the sector. And healthcare vaccine, mostly from the prominence of COVID-19, which impacted the sector. And we really think that COVID-19, during the COVID-19 time and other areas, vaccine becomes important, and hence the importance on this sector as well. So we tried to look at the key actors, like as you mentioned, customers and enterprises, and tried to map as well as bring the nuanced understanding of the ecosystem from the perspective of potential, from the market size, need assessment, regulations, finance, and technology. So try to map this information and try to bring out the nuanced understanding for the readers. If you look at the total market, I'm so sorry. Can you see my screen? So fine, okay. So from the market outlook perspective, we understand that the total addressable market for the solar refrigerant segment comes out to about 20.6 billion, with a segmented or a serviceable addressable market of 4.3 billion across 5 key segments. If we talk about the distribution, we understand that the farm gate, obviously fruits and vegetables take a larger share of it in terms of the total addressable market of 15 billion, followed by macro enterprises and other sectors. I'll come up to next slide in terms of how we try to calculate that, but I just want to highlight one important thing here, that there's a huge opportunity from the perspective of the total market. And also there are certain technologies which are doing well in this segment to support this market segments. And those are solar PV plus battery and solar PV plus phase change material. Solar PV plus battery is basically a traditional product with DC compressor with batteries. It's cost effective, but the maintenance and replacement is a key challenge. And that's where the innovation of PCM is there. It's initially costly, but and which is high, and its high cost is somewhat limiting its penetration in the market as much as it could. But it offers a wide temperature range, and it's OPEX light. So that could be another segment that needs to be looked at and which is promising for the sector. As I told you, while we estimated what we tried to look at inputs in terms of population, production, energy, infrastructure, as well as wastage as one of the pre-components to understand what kind of input requirements are there for each of the technologies. From there, we estimated the infrastructure requirements as well as gaps, and which gives us the output in terms of geography and number of products. We calculated the average cost of product for the technologies available from the technologies available in the market, and which gives a total addressable market. We took the adoption rate in terms of how quickly that product can be adopted over a certain period of time, and using the Roger-Bell's curve as well as primary research, we take the adoption rate and get the segmented or a serviceable addressable market. So from the definition perspective, total addressable market is a total market demand for a particular product or a service calculated from the potential consumer base and availability of product. And the segmented market is a portion of total addressable market that can be immediately serviced based on the rate of adoption of a specific market segment. So we use this calculation to calculate the market size, which gives us 20 billion for the total addressable market and 4.3 billion as a serviceable addressable market. Coming to the technologies, we try, as we told you, solar PV plus battery is a widely used technology, and solar PV plus phase material is the most cost-effective across all the 5 segments. So we mapped out these technologies from the across the technologies in terms of solar PV plus biomass, solar PV plus battery, solar PV with battery on grid, and refrigeration on DGs. And we calculate the total cost of operation across all the 5 segments. And you can see that the total cost of operation for these 2 technologies is lowest among all the variables that are available, all the other variables that are available in the market. That's primarily because the OPEX, capex of if the solar PV plus thermal battery is higher, its OPEX is lower. However, for the solar PV plus battery, the capex is lower, but the OPEX is higher. So that's variation we calculated for each of them. And to calculate this again, what we did is we took a refrigerator volume type of technology. We looked the capex in terms of unit cost of product, installation cost, operating expense in terms of energy usage, annual maintenance cost of replacement, mapped it over a period of 10 years with suitable assumptions in terms of replacement and the time required in terms of servicing and maintenance, and come up with the total addressable market, total cost of ownership for these technologies, and understood that these 2 could be prominently be the forefront or the front runner for the adoption of solar off-grid refrigeration or promotion of these technologies in the near future. You can find more information about these calculations in the report. Coming back to in terms of we tried to map the markets and the total cost of ownership in terms of technology, we also looked at innovative business models. While the upfront purchase through channels is obviously a preferred model across all the technologies, across all the segments, there are the dairy and the farm gate is experimenting 2 innovative models, which is cooling as service and rental lease model. Cooling as service in terms of it's simply similar to pay as you model, pay as use model, where your farmer produce organizations, large private dairies purchase refrigerators, and then the farmers are using it on a pay as you service basis. It's implemented by Chitle Dairy in Maharashtra and other such players as well. And the second model is rental lease model, where obviously the ownership, because of the upfront cost is higher, the ownership is not transferred initially, but people are paying a fixed monthly rent, farmers are paying a fixed monthly rent, and they're availing those services for using those services on a usage basis. It's basically implemented by Ecozen and other key players in the market. There are models in terms of government procurement, government policy, and partnership with large corporates, which are upcoming and can contribute to the potential growth of the sector. While we looked at the models, market segments, obviously the challenges which we tried to map, and we tried to map this across 3 segments, which is supply side, demand side, and ecosystem. If you look at the supply side challenge, the major challenge is the financing, because the poor access to finance for enterprises themselves due to lack of demonstrated business cases. So definitely financing is something which is important. Awareness is second point in terms of limited information with banks to support this technology. So awareness is a challenge. Service delivery and technology are also some of the challenge in terms of last mile reaching of these products to the consumers. And majority of existing cold storage support single commodity. So there needs to have a different temperature variations, which is coming up in the market. We're not saying it's not there, but from the supply side perspective, financing and awareness are the two key challenges, and they're trying to work on the service delivery and the technology innovation models. On the demand side, again, awareness is a challenge because they're not aware about the upcoming technologies or like solar PV plus PCM and other technologies are available in the market. The recognition is more towards, or the preference is more towards branded products. So even in the rural areas, in our interactions with the people, we understood that they are going for Samsung, LG, and other branded products. So their preference for local product, India assembled product from different players is not there. So that's one of the challenge. And also financing. As we told you, the high upfront cost is there from the market. So that's something which is in absence of consumer financing becoming a hindrance for these players, for these consumers to adopt this product. From the ecosystem side, again, they want more understanding on the return on investment payback period in terms of understanding how the product can simply impact the communities or the livelihood of the people. Technologies, again, because it's a nascent technology, as we told you, solar PV plus PCM is upcoming technology. So solar PV plus batteries there, but solar PV plus PCM and other technologies are still nascent. So they want to have more understanding and information about technology. The regulations which are not specific in terms of more proactive regulations to support the solar refrigeration might be important in the region. So these are some of the challenges from both the financing awareness as well as technology, nascent technology, which are hindering the adoption of these products in the market. But there are challenges, there are opportunities as well. So we try to map as that well for the readers in terms of where are the opportunities and how they can think about tapping these, promoting these products in the rural areas. So if you look at the challenge opportunities, we mapped it around government initiatives because yes, as Jethani sir told, the government is taking a lot of initiatives to support this product. Yes, as we know, some of the initiatives has to be more specific to the solar refrigeration, but yes, there are some initiatives which are promoting this sector. Also, there's rapid growth across relevant market segments because everyone is thinking about that, and also business model innovation. So if we talk about FarmGate, the government initiatives in terms of USD 13 billion agriculture infrastructure fund, which is talking about providing concessional loans for infrastructure development, but includes cold storage as well. So definitely that's an opportunity where we can think about more schemes to becoming a more financing to become up for cold storages, which could be tapped by the by the entrepreneurs as well. National Horticulture Mission, which extends additional financial assistance for solar-based technologies. There also we can think about getting this solar off-grid refrigeration get recognized and get more support from on the financing side from the government initiatives. Potential market opportunity for refrigeration units for storage at varied temperatures. So as you know that all the fruits and vegetables cannot be stored at the same point. A lot of cold storage in the market currently is only for potatoes. But if we think about the requirement for all the products and variables, there's a definitely huge market opportunity if we think about storing different fruits and vegetables at different price points. And yes, there are FPOs and cooperatives coming together for supporting models such as cooling as service or community ownership models, which are trying to support solar refrigeration due to its initial nascent high cost. If we talk about dairy, there is a USD 2 billion animal husbandry infrastructure development fund, which extends concessional loans, especially for refrigeration segments as well. And there is a dairy processing infrastructure development fund with the outlay of USD 1.5 billion, which provides subsidized loan at 6.5% to replace old chilling processing plants for dairy sector. So obviously government is thinking about some initiatives, and similarly market, if you talk about increase in air or milk production from from India, which requires additional chilling capacity. We are the largest producer of milk, so definitely chilling capacity is required, more chilling capacity is required from our side. And obviously unreliable electricity supply in rural areas. As Charan mentioned, we are getting in roads, we have electrified a lot of places, but still the 24/7 electricity is the aim, and we are trying to reach there, but definitely in those segments, till that time we reach that level, we can definitely support from solar off-grid refrigeration to these dairy players. Interest from cooperative societies in procurement of milk chillers is definitely another thing which is talking about business model innovation to support this technology in the refrigeration segment. If we talk about vaccines, yes, government recently announced usage of 29,000 cold chain points, 40,000 refrigerators, 300 refrigerators for application of COVID-19 vaccines. So I was telling you that we looked at healthcare vaccines mostly from the COVID-19 situation, because when we started this research, the COVID was there in March, and hence we wanted to point out around the COVID-19 situation. So definitely that's a major point around supporting the solar off-grid refrigeration. But if we talk about the market segments, obviously huge demand from rural PHCs, subcenters having irregular power supply, and also potential market for refrigeration in pathology labs, blood labs, and local medical shops, which is impacting the demand for the solar off-grid refrigeration in the rural areas. In terms of micro enterprises, there are studies which establish that there is an increase in profit by USD 57 per month with the sale of chilled products by using solar refrigerators. That definitely pose an opportunity for micro enterprises to adopt these products. And there's a recent emphasis on last mile availability of essential commodities, including juice, cold drinks, and other areas, which also suggest opportunities for micro enterprises for solar refrigerators. For households, there's rise in demand for rural areas, and additional income by starting home-based businesses definitely lay down as an opportunity for solar refrigeration in rural areas. If we talk about government initiatives, overall, I can say that scale up access to energy for rural productive use, USD 23 million total project cost, is supporting the initiatives, in which they're also talking about supporting rural productive uses, including solar refrigerators. So definitely a pros and opportunity for that. And in terms of business model innovation, integration of product with other systems, such as mini grids, offers a potential for meeting refrigeration demand in off-grid areas. So that's also there. So that brings to understanding the challenges, opportunities. We came to recommendations, where we tried to provide overarching recommendations across three themes. One is enhancing the policy for off-grid solar refrigeration, providing nuanced financing options, and creating an enabling ecosystem. If we talk about enhancing the policy regime for off-grid solar refrigeration, we suggest four primary recommendations: that we need to design and promote a comprehensive policy providing subsidies or credit guarantees for solar off-grid refrigeration systems. Basically, we are saying that we need to have a dedicated policy with a dedicated focus to provide support to solar off-grid refrigeration infrastructure in the markets. As we understood that there are some policies which are having a component of solar refrigeration, but we need to have a dedicated policies supporting either providing subsidies or credit guarantees to support the initial cost of solar off-grid refrigeration in the rural areas. We need to rationalize the existing tariffs and provide tax incentives to companies manufacturing off-grid solar refrigeration. For example, the custom duty on solar increased from 20% from 14% in August 20. So definitely that impacts the price of solar off-grid refrigerator. Being a total unit, including solar and refrigeration, it's a costly product, as I told you earlier. So we definitely need to have some tariffs and some considerations around providing tax incentives so that we can lower down the cost of overall manufacturing for solar grid refrigerations. We need to promote awareness on existing product testing methods like Verasol, global test methods, from two perspectives. A, definitely to increase or build the consumer confidence around it. If we have a testing method where we certifying these products to a certain extent, that definitely boost the consumer's acceptance and consumers' confidence in these products, and also protect the enterprises who are trying to support this sector from the fraudulent products. So definitely we need to promote awareness on product testing methods and rationalize them to sort of adopt in the manufacturing side. And lastly, we need to either create or support a national level fund from the unutilized budgets designated for energy efficiency and cold chain infrastructure development. For example, there are National Horticulture Mission and HMNEH, which has $8 million as unutilized budget. We're not saying that we need to carve out all the budgets to solar off-grid refrigeration, but we can definitely look about whatever budgets are remaining from the schemes to have some portion of it routed to the solar off-grid refrigeration to provide the incentive, subsidies, or credit guarantees, as we highlighted earlier. Will be useful for the sector. If we talk specifically about DORAs and financial institutions, they need to design innovative instruments like blended finance to support the entrepreneurs in the segment. For example, we can think about providing interest subvention support to solar off-grid refrigeration companies when they take loans from NBFCs at 16 to 18%. So probably they can think about providing a blended finance component where the grant can impact the reduce the interest rate and provide interest rate subvention for the entrepreneurs so that they can further pass it on the benefit to the consumers. We need to also promote consumer financing options like revolving funds or viability gap funding to improve affordability for the end consumer. Selco, as we can hear from Huda, is doing that by providing viability gap funding through its entrepreneurship fund. They are funding at 5% for the end consumers to adopt these products. And such more revolving funds or viability gap funding mechanisms will definitely help the sector. If we talk about companies, the companies need to provide consumer support for incorporation of existing refrigerant in the existing value chain. So a lot of players whom we have spoken to has mentioned that what they're trying to do is they're trying to bundle their offerings as an attractive package of service. Probably they can think about access to inputs for the farm gates, or buyer-side linkage for the dairy products. So those, if they can provide using their networks, using their interactions with the other players, it will be really useful for the sector, because consumer will then see it not just as one product, but a package or a bouquet, which can help them not just reduce the cost of inputs, but also increase their marketing, their revenues from selling it products to the distant consumer, which they might not be able to do it now. So a package will be definitely helpful from the companies, and a lot of players are trying to innovate on those fronts as well. The second is we need to develop and demonstrate bankable projects and proof of concept, mostly to show or reflect the repayment potential, reduce payback period, additional benefits in terms of environmental and social impact for the financial institutions to understand that this is important, and this is actually impacting the livelihoods and creating more social impact on the ground, so that they can come forward and support it at a larger scale. We need to implement or support innovative business models. For example, there is a company, KPay, which promotes pay per time, pay per ampere, and such mechanisms to support, to reduce the upfront capital costs and improve affordability of these off-grid solar products. So such innovative business models can be integrated to support the off-grid solar refrigeration in the market. Lastly, but not the least, we need to generate consumer awareness on the benefits of technology. For that, we can do campaigns like village level awareness campaigns, campaigns on wheels, door-to-door campaigns to create awareness about these products, and also tell them about the benefits or the availability of financing mechanisms or schemes to support market expansion, which is there available in the market right now. If we talk about other ecosystem players, we suggested that we need to establish a digital platform with data on technology applications and potential market segments. Something like, I'm sure everybody has heard about Samiksha, which is promoting the EET by MOMS in TERI, where they're talking about how they can get awareness about the different technologies and their potential segments. We can think about having a solar grid refrigeration, talking about market potential across segments, across technologies, to create more awareness, which can be useful for the consumers as well as financial institutions. We need to design and implement a training program on financing, like again, BEE is doing it with IBA to provide, to create training programs for financing of e-products, where they make them aware about the repayment periods, the reduced payback periods, additional benefits and others, to help financial institutions take conscious decision about supporting these products. And that will definitely be helpful. The training on this solar refrigeration will also be helpful from that perspective. Lastly, we think about demand aggregation of off-grid solar refrigerators. There are multiple players, multiple technologies, multiple players working in the segment. So, for example, like Ujala program by ESL led to reduce in LED prices from USD4 to USD0.5. Can we think about collaboration and do demand aggregation to achieve economics of scale and reduce unit price of per product for the end consumer? So these are some recommendations which we highlight in the report. You can read all of this information in greater detail, along with the calculations and assumptions that we have taken across the market size, across all the opportunities in terms of how we try to define the opportunities, challenges, and the recommendations in detail in the report. But here I'll just take a pause and try to thank GOGLA for the opportunity for us to work on this report. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ankit. For the audiences, I think that was a sort of rapid fire, quick fire kind of a download that you all got. I'm sure this was just to kind of pique your interest into the report itself, which will be available to you. And so what we have done here is that we have touched upon various sectors. We have touched upon various areas of each segment of the sector. For example, challenges and technologies and financial issues, etc. Many of them have already been answered from the government side by Mr. Jethani, and some of the things he spoke about, credit risk, for example, and equity support, innovation. I think a lot of answers are already there, but many of them we would like to still know about. And I can already see some interesting points being raised on the chat box. So it will be even more interesting to hear what the stakeholders from the sector, which includes manufacturers and others, we'll have to say about this. So let's move on to the panel discussion now and invite my dear friend Santosh Singh from Intellecap to moderate the session, and request all of you to give a hear to our great panel of speakers and to see what they actually have to feedback on the report and other subjects from the sector. So over to you, Santosh, and take it off from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Praveen, and good afternoon to everyone here, and good morning to people from other time zones. Uh, I have a good panel with me, but let me just kind of quickly summarize the agenda for the next rest of the session. We would have a panel discussion, and then we have a question answer session for 15 minutes, and then we have a closing remarks. So just to kind of give you a sense of the what the purpose of the panel is, that we heard about the report and the kind of market potential that we have been estimating for the sector. And it goes without saying that we are yet to realize the potential that is there in the market and how we can scale up that off-grid refrigeration market and what can be done, what are the insights, what could be the way forward. These are all the questions that I'm going to deal in the panel. The panel discussion would have 3 rounds of remarks, and then we will open for the question answer. But meanwhile, we also have a few questions that will open for poll, and you can respond to those questions, and the summary of those polls and votings would be reflected by our panelists. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce the panel. And uh, I have a very, very distinguished and knowledgeable panel who have been working on several relevant segments of off-grid refrigeration. So it is going to draw a lot of insight from multiple perspectives. I have with me Huda Jaffer. Huda, can you just switch on the video? I would request all my panelists who can switch on the video so that audience can see. Huda is a lead designer at Selco Foundation, have been in this sector for quite some time. Uh, Richa Goyal is Senior Insight Manager at Energy Saving Trust. Richa is, I think Richa's video is not available, but she is here. Siddharth Gahoi is Program Manager at Tata Trust and has been working extensively with Sustain Plus initiative. I have Tanya Kothari, who is with Cell Foundation, and she is Research and Advocacy Manager for a joint program between DFID and Cell Foundation. And I have Tushar Devidayal, who is the CEO of Devidayal Solar and an entrepreneur trying to provide solution to this space. So this is the panel that I have. And the way the panel discussion going to start, I'm going to kind of invite each of my panelists to give a quick round of introduction of their own kind of individual background as well as the organizations. And they can draw upon the kind of related experiences that connect to the discussion today. And then I will go to the specific questions, and then we have the remarks from there. So Huda, if I request you to kind of provide the first round of introduction of your work and how it relates to the sector and opening remarks.
Sure, thank you. Thanks so much, Santosh. Thanks so much for having us on the panel, and wonderful to see so many both familiar faces and also people that we work with pretty closely on a daily basis. So thanks. At Selco Foundation, we primarily look at sort of building the ecosystem for sustainable energy-driven solutions to be adopted, to be scaled, depending on different regions and contexts. And so we work with local enterprises to be able to deliver a lot of these solutions, install them, service them, unlock relevant policies, schemes, financing for them. And we work with a network of partners to do this and different kinds of stakeholders, right? From a cooling perspective, especially from a livelihood and cooling perspective, more so over the past year, it has really reinforced the need, the potential, the market, the demand. So this is kind of a good timely discussion to really push that to the next level. When it comes to cooling, we actually see a potential across the spectrum of passive and active combination and active technologies. So right from your insulation, your walling panels, your Fresnels, your exhaust fans, to your coolers, all the way to your PCM iSpace technologies, your reefer vehicles, as well as your portable kind of more carry portable cooling solutions. and specifically within 3 segments. So when we look at livelihoods, we generally break it up into agriculture, animal husbandry, and micro businesses. So across the 3, and across the spectrum of active to, cold rooms to actually products to portable devices, you can actually see a very strong relevance across agriculture, animal husbandry, and micro businesses. So when it comes to agriculture, of course, even workspaces where production is happening, processing is happening, there also there's a huge need and potential for cooling to actually transform productivity of individuals, all the way, of course, up to agri-cold rooms, agri-cold storages, and of course the portable reefer vehicles and the refrigeration and the retail refrigerators that we see. In animal husbandry, actually, so this is somewhere in animal husbandry where we also feel it's a very cooling, and animal husbandry is a very low-hanging fruit from an impact perspective. So specifically when it comes to sheds, poultry sheds, dairy sheds, you actually see a direct improvement in the mortality rate, in the FCR rate. So it's a very direct connection to incomes when you link cooling and animal husbandry. Of course, from a vaccine and vaccine carrier side also, there's a lot of potential there, including the milk and the meat cooling needs. And then from a resilient micro businesses, I think this others will also talk about a bit more, but specifically from a livelihood perspective, we see a very strong linkage here. So I'll stop there and happy to come back with more. Thanks.
Thanks, Sudha. I'll get back to you in the second round of some specific questions on the work you are doing. But moving on to the next panelist, Richa, can I have your quick remark on your organization and the work you are doing in the off-grid solar refrigeration space?
Thanks, Santosh, and apologies everybody for my inability to switch on the camera. So I work for Energy Saving Trust, which is a UK-based organization, and I serve as the research co-lead for the LEA, or the Low Energy Inclusive Appliances Program, and the Efficiency for Access Coalition. Our mandate is to expand access to high-performing, efficient, affordable appliances in off and weak grid regions, and we mainly work in Africa and South Asia. And Energy Saving Trust, which is my organization, and CLASP jointly lead these programs. So we do many few different types of interventions across different types of appliances, and we have an R&D fund, via which we've given grants to several key off-grid refrigeration technologies, including Pasera, AMT, Cold Herbs, Promethean. Devi Dayal Tushar is on the panel here with us, and there are a few others, and I would encourage you to look up at our website. I can drop a link should you be interested. We also developed test methods for refrigerators, which is done by our colleagues at CLASP. And on the topic of research, we've published a roadmap on off-grid refrigeration technologies. And I saw Jeremy Tate was one of our colleagues who's dropped a link in the chat box that's also available for you to look at. We have several ongoing and to be launched research projects in refrigerators, including refrigerator field assessment, building an impact assessment framework for refrigerators, exploring options for refrigerator local assembly, and so on. And we also have evolved a strong project portfolio to investigate the various environmental impacts of refrigeration technologies. There are very low appliance ownership rates in these regions, as many of you know. For example, in Africa, it's 4% in fridges in rural regions, and many of these households will be buying fridges for the very first time. So there is an opportunity to directly leapfrog this sector to more climate-friendly tech. We also have a couple of projects lined up on refrigeration affordability. Happy to talk about some of this later on in the webinar, and should any of you want to reach out to me on this later. Thank you.
Thanks, Richa. While I go to my next panelist for opening remark, I'll also ask my colleague Laura to put some audience questions. So audience can provide some responses to that, and we will come back to those summary responses and get panelists to kind of respond to. If you have kind of challenges in okay, yeah, this is open in front of you. Those who are kind of choosing others, please mention the other option in the chat. The question does not have an option to put the response there if you choose others. Okay, so while audience engages in the questions, I'm going to my next panelist, Siddharth Gahoi. A quick remark from you about your background and the work you are doing in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh, and thanks for having me here in the webinar. So I'm from the Tata Trust and Sustain Plus ecosystem, under this ecosystem, we are extensively working, in a portfolio where we are using DRE technologies for scale. And for scale means there are pan-India programs across regions which is ongoing, and they are across themes. So while we are implementing and designing the program, we actually understand there's a huge potentials for energy, especially DRE-based solutions across themes. And especially again, if we look, refrigeration space across themes, again, there are potential and gaps which we can address. If I say we are currently working on livelihood, health, and education, but I also see gaps even in sports sector during my working on the field. So yeah, definitely there are I'll say gaps, and with the recent technologies solution which is emerging in the market, yeah, during the course of I'll say next few years, we are able to address all those gaps. Currently, some of the programs that we are having, especially in the livelihood sectors, which is to promote income of the household or farmer, as well as other sectors where we are actually trying to give them quality education or quality health services. All of them location, we find it out like, yeah, definitely there's a gap, and we are trying to address them using various solutions. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Siddharth. My next panelist is Tanya. Tanya have been quite effective in building ecosystem with Cell Foundation's work. So Tanya, over to you for your quick remark and a brief introduction about the work in the sector.
Thank you, Santosh, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. So this report is a very good step in addressing the need for more information and data about the cold chain, off-grid cold chain sector. So I'm Tanya Kothari. I work for Shell Foundation. Shell Foundation is a UK registered charity, and we're working to ensure access to energy and sustainable mobility for low-income consumers across Africa and India both. We support early-stage social enterprises as well as market enablers to scale and attain financial viability to meet this goal. Shell Foundation, working in this off-grid cooling space, we're supporting both technology and business model innovation. We have 3 companies that we have supported in our portfolio, which have developed their own cooling technologies, namely Inficold, Inspira Farms, and Churchill. And they're working across different value chains: dairy, vaccine, agriculture, as well as micro enterprises. So we also have a few other enterprises who are integrating cooling solutions into their business model, and we are trying to test a few business model innovations with them to identify where the integration of cooling solutions will add most value, and which customers should they be targeting as a part of it. And apart from supporting like these portfolio companies to scale, we are also trying to identify solutions for common challenges which are being faced across the value chain for off-grid cooling, whether it be demand aggregation, as you mentioned in your report, or partnerships through various different or new financing options, which can offer lower cost financing or lower risk financing to these players. We're also supporting Powering Livelihoods, which is a program led by CEW and Will Grow in India, which is aiming to scale DRE solutions for livelihood, and cold chain is a huge focus area for that program as well.
Thanks, Tanya. Now I'm going back to the entrepreneur on the panel who is working in this space. Tushar, over to you for a quick opening remark and a brief introduction of the work we are doing here.
Thanks, Santosh. I had a few slides. I don't know if Ankit can put those up. Oh, thanks so much, Ankit. Thank you to GOGLA and to Intellecap for this very timely report. I think that's it's very helpful for the sector to understand this niche of off-grid DRE technology. And a bit about our product. What you see over here is our 100-liter off-grid DC refrigerator. It's designed to store drinks, dairy, and food. And when it comes to medicines and vaccines, we've had success in animal husbandry, storing veterinary vaccine. Because it's made for the off-grid space, it's a efficient and rugged construction refrigerator. It consumes only 0.3 kilowatt hours per 24 hours. And we have 2 models, which is a refrigerator in the 1 to 11 degree range. And then we have a freezer that goes down to -18. Given that there's different configurations, different customers want, with 1 battery, 2 batteries, 4 batteries, depending on the autonomy, our refrigerators also work on 12, 24, and 48 volt. We've tested our fridges with Clasp in the Netherlands for steady state operation power, pull down times, load processing efficiency, and we're happy that we were the finalists for the Global Leap Award in 2019. As we plan to enter the African market, we're working very closely on a pay-go model as well. Next slide, please, Ankit. This is a bit of a company plug. Apologies for that. This is our Global Leap Award. And on the right, you see a page that's pulled out of the Buyer's Guide to Off-Grid Refrigerators. That's the Buyer's Guide to Outstanding Off-Grid Refrigerators. And this is a good guide because it helps as a comparison to what I would call a world-class refrigerators versus everything out there. And it'll tell you a lot about autonomy, pull down time, and daily energy consumption. So I recommend you read this report. It should be available on either the Efficiency for Access or Clasp websites. Next slide, please. So this slide over here is more to set the context on my comments later on in this discussion. This is what we do. So on the top left, you see a Selco Foundation installed refrigerator on a mobile canteen. This was in Chitradurg district in Karnataka. Solar panels mounted on the roof and a mobile DC solution. On the top right is a veterinary vaccine solution installed by Tata Trust in Hazaribagh. This is for anything from deworming medicine to a regular vaccination shot. On the bottom left is a Kirana store or a general store in Odisha. And the bottom right just shows you the various types of product that entrepreneurs and micro entrepreneurs put in their fridge and how full they pack it. So one point to note is our rural customers are demanding customers, and we need to be fit for purpose when we design a product. So I thought these pictures would be useful setting the context. So with that, back to Santosh. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tushar. And before I go to my first question, which will draw from the work that my panelists have been doing, Laura, can I get the response for the first polling question? Just wanted to understand how the audience feels about the major challenge in adoption. Okay, so this is the majority of the people, I think 72% feel financing is the major challenge, and second option is awareness about the technology. So financing and awareness have emerged as the two major challenges in this space. So I would kind of request my panelists to kind of provide their perspective when they are speaking on the relevant questions. But in the next round, I'm going to ask some specific questions, which I primarily kind of have put down considering the experience and the work the panelists have been doing in that space. And I also am aware that Huda has a time constraint. So I would start with you, Huda, if you can allow me. So one of the things that you see, the numbers that we saw in the report, a huge number, $20 billion market. How do you assess the, the potential and growth of the off-grid cooling sector? We have talked about the overall market size, but where do you see the growth going, and is there an insight from your work, because you have been working on the ground? And second thing that if you can touch upon is that which are the segment in off-grid, decentralized cooling that you see have the huge potential? If an entrepreneur has to prioritize, there are multiple segments. Which segment you think is fast growing or requires immediate attention? So I request you to kind of keep your remarks to around 2 to 2.5 minutes, so that if there is some time, I can have a cross response from other panelists as well. Over to you.
Sure, thanks so much, Sandra. Just a quick thing on the poll, just before coming to the question, I would definitely agree. There's, yes, financing, but financing always is. Financing will happen if there's enough awareness and capacity. If there's good awareness, good capacity, then you automatically will have higher capacity. So definitely that's, also coming to your question, that's one of the things that we see really lacking in terms of, like the three products I would say that actually are facing just kind of unlocking barriers to scale. One is the agri cold rooms and the cold storage units for different commodities state-wise. So agri cold storage is one of them. The other is, of course, the retail refrigerators, and then the vaccine refrigerators. So these are the three that we feel there isn't much technology innovation needed on it, while of course it can always be there. But these are the three which mainly face barriers to actually scale, where it's a tried and tested and really solid kind of solution which can lead to better impact. In terms of off-grid market potential, we actually see plenty of growth potential in on-grid as well. So not necessarily off-grid, but even, on-grid end users, off-grid, semi-unreliable. And, within the market potential, generally we measure based on, loss of incomes, either due to access or unreliability. That's essentially how we look at it. Even more so, what we have realized is a lot of the stakeholders, whether it's bankers or DCs or state level livelihood departments, a lot of their mindset has actually moved much more towards decentralized solutions during and post-COVID. One way or the other, I think the realization of the need for decentralization, it's kind of reinforced a lot of that. So we actually find more of attraction during and post-COVID for solutions like this from a livelihood perspective, right? And one thing that we do need to be careful about is, even though we assess the market and we say yes, there's potential to grow, the danger is that while we do pump in resources and we do unlock finance, the utilization of it, the potential of it, a lot of what we find missing to actually grow is the capacity building of the stakeholders. So I'll elaborate more on that specifically maybe in another question, but yeah, that's one gap that I see is pretty huge.
Thanks, Sudha. And before I move to my next panelist, Laura, can you put the question that is very relevant for the discussion we are having in the audience? Which market segment has the highest potential for the adoption of off-grid solar refrigeration? So while Huda talked a little bit about on that, but let me have the questions. And while the questions are being answered, let me move to the next panelist, Siddharth. Just you guys have been doing a lot of work on the ground in different kind of livelihood space and with the farmers, where off-grid solutions are one of the kind of critical thing that you are focusing on. So, just wanted to get your opinion on the huge case, especially the vaccines or, the kind of on the ground challenges you see, where you can see the off-grid refrigeration being a game changer for the livelihood creation for the farmers, or for meeting some of the kind of healthcare needs, both for human as well as the cattle's vaccination. So, any insight on that you have?
So I think, and Tushar was showing few pictures. There was one picture where Tushar has said that we are using a cold storage which is used for animal vaccine storage. That's I'll say our block level storage location. And from there, it has to go to the individual end users, which is through our paravets or our livelihood resource person. Actually, when we are doing this livelihood program, under which the livestock is one of the primary, component, especially in the tribal areas, we find out that, the tribal farmer who might have a limited amount of land, the livestock is one of the, I'll say, primary or important part of their overall annual income. And at that time, when we enter the mortality, and I think there are many reports also being published, the mortality is somewhere between 20 to 25%. That means if a person is losing one animal, he is losing approximately 20% of his annual, income. So that is a huge chunk. And there are multiple reasons. And one of the reasons was, improper vaccine or no vaccine at all. So our team initially started with, I think, existing technologies of using AC fridges based on the grid for storing the vaccine, as well as the regular vaccine boxes to carry out the vaccines. But in the whole chain, we don't know whether the temperature was maintained, whether the temperature was maintained all the time during the from wholesale to retail and to the end user, and how effective the vaccine is. So then to reduce this, I'll say gray area, we started using cold storage for storage, as well as new technologies for even vaccination transport. With time, we are actually seeing the trends that there, within the, I'll say, the whole community who is doing the supply, find out that it is very convenient for them to actually be sure that the vaccine was stored at the right temperature. And they also get to know that when the vaccine was not at the right temperature, and what they can do, they can discard the vaccine, or they can at least do some method to save those vaccine from getting bad. I think in the report it also been written, 20 to 25% of vaccine is getting destroyed, or I'm saying not being used because they are not able to maintain properly in the value chain. So using this technology, we are able to achieve that. Yeah, there's the stabilization in the whole value chain, but definitely the solution comes with a cost. As I think all of us are talking, that initial cost of these solutions are high, and how could we make it more bankable? How could we make it more friendly so that the people or the different entities can adopt it? And one of the method is definitely the awareness amongst the end consumer, awareness amongst the people who is involved in the whole value chain, that this is something which is beneficial for you, as well as awareness within the financing institute, so that they can also start lending for these technologies. So I think currently we are using it as a gap financing or as a a contribution from our end, but I think we are also trying to approach different entities who can support this for scale up.
So Siddharth, if I ask just a quick follow-up question, when you think of the solution solving a particular problem, I think of your vaccine storage, or in your program, the fitment, do you have all the information available that where I can get the technology, what kind of market ecosystem exists, or you guys feel that there is a lot of effort that you need to do to identify the technology that can suit? I just want to understand on the ground, for example, somebody who is working with a grassroots level interventions, do they have access to this kind of information that, okay, I need a cold storage which can be powered by DRE, and I know where to get that, what could be the cost, etc.?
Not at this point of time, not all information are there outside. I think there are, as I said, there are many technologies which is, budding, have a good product, but may not have a visibility. Sometimes because of the, I said the company is new, so their reach is not there. So we need to be a bridge in between, so that they can, reach to the customers, or the customers can reach to the technologies. So yes, there are gaps and gray areas in between for a scale.
Great. Laura, if I can get the response to the questions before I move to Richa. So we just ask which market segment, and I think vaccine and farm gate and dairy, and oh no, micro enterprises, I think all pervasive. So seem that we are quite on target when we talk about these things. There are no other responses. Richa has been doing a lot of work on refrigeration's affordability, what determines the affordability of refrigerations, and financing had been a challenge. I think all of us have been talking about financing from both sides, consumer financing where affordability is a concern, as well as the financing to the enterprises. So Richa, your take on what do you think are the various determinants of refrigerators affordability?
Thanks, Santosh. So we've looked at this at some detail in the context of the domestic refrigeration use case. So under 300 liter fridges, where a lot of these insights will be applicable to fridges up to 600 liters, very large fridges as well. And there is sizable variation in economic viability across different contexts. We all know that these could be due to climates, taxation structures, manufacturing capacities, sometimes even how goods are classified for importation purposes across countries. For example, in some African countries, they're classified as luxury goods, and so the import duties are higher. And cost drivers can be very many. You obviously mentioned appliance financing costs, but the logistics of moving appliances, duties and taxes is a major one. User behavior also has implications on system sizing and therefore on price, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a big list. Among all of these drivers, two key trend or cost drivers that can be leveraged or affected to influence affordability are financing, of course, and this is outside of the cost reductions due to technological changes, and I won't go into that, but so PAYG is an obvious financing mechanism, and Ankit has touched on that. The second is the role of duties and taxes, which also has link with local assembly as an affordability strategy. And on financing mechanism, PAYG is an obvious strategy, and there are many companies who've already applied this approach to productive use appliances like Sun Culture, Azuri. But in the refrigeration space, there's Coolbox, which has started to utilize PAYG platforms for cooling as a service, or a servitization-based model, which is offered instead of selling a refrigerator as an asset. And that has even more affordability benefits because it kind of eliminates the upfront cost challenge. And recently, some companies like Innovex and KPay, Ankit also mentioned KPay, have started new type of service offering to appliance manufacturers and distributors. and they've developed B2B software solutions that companies can invest in with minimum royalty fee and forego some effort in having to develop proprietary software, hardware solutions for PayG or remote monitoring. And in theory, this should bring in cost savings, but how much of these savings will be passed on to consumers is a question mark. And then on duties and taxes, in one of our research collaborations with Shah Energy Research Center, we analyzed pricing of few fridge models under 300 liters, and found that majority of the refrigeration system cost comes from power components and import duties, regardless of geography or model. And some key markets have high duty rates on refrigerator appliances, but relatively low cost and low duties on associated power components because of duty waivers. This is with the exception of batteries, of course. And in these environments, what you will find is that if you want to create the most affordable refrigeration system, it may not be the most efficient refrigeration, which is counterintuitive. And India is a little bit of a unique market because some refrigerator appliances are manufactured in country and so are not subject to import duties, where it's very different in Africa, where most DC fridges are imported. And so given the interplay and design considerations between, like how much to keep insulation, how much to size battery or thermal storage, and all of that to reach a desired performance level, the manufacturer may benefit from first understanding taxation structures in the countries where he wishes to retail before actually designing the system to reach the most affordable price point. And it's also important to rally with policymakers to, for keeping the taxation structures reasonable. For instance, in Kenya, a compressor style refrigerator fully assembled, if it is imported, is taxed at 25% upon arrival. But if you only look at equipment of a compressor refrigerator, it's taxed at only 8%. So yeah, we hope to launch a project on local assembly soon to investigate some of these issues.
So Richa, just one very interesting point that I just hear from your response is you said that customer behavior or the customization of technology for a proper use case can also have huge impact. And I think this is something that I would, when I go to Tushar, I would like to understand whether a particular use case can be customized and kind of we can create a particular use case based appliances which might be more amenable to the need, we have seen that in many cases in the solar water pump that people tend to buy the oversized pumps because of certain kind of preferences. And so I'll try to look at that taxation and others. And I think there is one interesting point that I would also see if audience or anyone wants to kind of throw light on in the chat box is the pay-as-you-go models have not been that successful in India. They have not been as in a big uptake as it has been in the other part of the country. So whether pay-as-you-go models are the right fit for India, or we can think of some other models. But yeah, thanks for your response, and I'll get back to some other questions to you, and probably you can think of a bit more on the consumer behavior side of that, then I can draw on that. Moving on to my next panelist, Tanya. Financing has been a critical challenge that we have been seeing and coming in different formats, be it like taxation, the cost, etc. All have some implication. Business models, and consumer end-use financing has quite a big impact on the uptake of renewable energy products, and we have seen in many sectors. So, looking at the India market, looking at the kind of sector we are saying, what is your take on business models and consumer financing, playing a big role in making this market grow? Any learnings from your, experience with the enterprise that we have been supporting? So your take on that.
Thanks, Santosh. And I'd just like to recognize the excellent point made by Huda that there's always an underlying reason for the lack of financing. So it's not just that financing is not there. There are various funders and donors interested in this sector, but maybe they just don't have enough evidence, or that case hasn't been presented to them with aggregated data, with a proof of concept of the financial as well as the climate impact of cold chain technology. So I think one of the things that does need to be there is more research and more data availability for different stakeholders, based on what their need is and what risk they are seeing, which can be mitigated through presenting this data and information to them. So that's definitely something that needs to be done. So when we talk about financing, there are still two types of financing, or two levels of financing needed for this sector. One is definitely more funding into innovation on cost reduction. So this could be more technology innovation, but also the point that Richa mentioned, for example, on identifying how different cost structures can help you reduce cost in terms of taxation or manufacturing and assembly, etc. So I think that is one area. But the other area, which is more important, because there are now various technologies that have been demonstrated to be viable, and that have been tested, that have been certified, are validated. So now there is more need of funding for business model innovation, because what we are seeing in this sector is also that a lot of the enterprises that we support who have developed their proprietary technologies, they are now having to do everything from market linkage to the consumer awareness to sharing data on impact, as well as on the benefits to the customer, as well as financing, as well as they're also expected to now offer pay solutions to their customers without themselves having a lack of financing. So these roles need to be de-linked. The technology player needs to focus on what they do best, which is being able to manufacture and provide the good quality equipment to their customers. And there need to be more specialized intermediaries for these different roles of market linkages or for financing. So we cannot expect a few enterprises to take on all of these roles. So I think that's one area which we are trying to also identify, where other players can come in and support these technology providers with partnerships. So we are testing a few partnerships of so corporates who could be off-takers, as well as these technology providers working together, and a demand aggregation partner and a separate financing partner, and trying to see how these different players can come together and offer a good financially viable business model. So this is one area. The other is that again, when it comes to the financing challenge, it's important to see in all of these different value chains, as also outlined in your report. So for vaccinations, there is a different kind of technology required, as well as a different point where it needs to enter the value chain. Similarly, for horticulture, there will be a different requirement. So there needs to be a better understanding of which points in the supply chain is a cold chain solution needed, and where is it adding value. So that is the place where you identify who your customer is, and where you can get the correct income increase for your different customers from, and that's where you can then charge that similar price point. So just as an example, trying to sell a large scale cold storage system to a farmer versus trying to sell it to an FPO, where there is that demand aggregation, where there is that risk that can be taken, or partnering with a corporate who would like to source from this FPO to actually pay the upfront cost might be a better option. So trying to identify where the value addition is resulting from integration of cooling, and then trying to extract that value from there. I think that will help in creating a better financial model for the enterprises, and then also accessing capital. So another thing that we are trying to do is there is a mix of, so for some of this high risk capital, obviously grant is still required. There is equity needed for scaling up of these enterprises which have demonstrated their solution, but there's also need of debt, there's need of working capital. And again, as I said, there are different funders who are interested in the sector offering capital, but they're not identifying the correct way, or are working in silos. So there are organizations interested in healthcare working in just solving the problem for that sector. There are organizations interested in agriculture. So all of these different funders also need to come together on the same platform and try to work together to deploy their capital together in a more organized way. So we are working currently, and this is not yet official, but working on a partnership with Rabo Foundation and IKEA Foundation to try to set up a guarantee fund for different technologies, including cold chain, mainly focused on agriculture, to be able to access working capital through debt. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Any quick remark on cooling as a service of, as a new practice that any of your companies are doing or you see as a potential in India?
So, none of our portfolio companies currently are offering cooling as a service as a model. They're still working on trying to finance through different financing providers for their customers. So they're still playing that role of being the linkage for financing. But I don't think we have seen enough data on enterprises trying to pilot cooling as a service beyond small pilots. Beyond small pilots, we haven't seen it at scale yet. as
Okay.
that does need significant amount of capital with the enterprise, which they are still struggling to access.
Great. We would look forward to your kind of initiative with Rao Bank and IKEA, because that would be really, this is one of the things that came out in the report as well, that we need more financing options, more blended finance to come into the sector. Moving on to my next panelist, Tushar, as an entrepreneur, you have looked at the different market segment and you have a strategy for different kind of segment, different product categories. How do you see the market growing in short term and medium term? And as an entrepreneur, where you are focusing all your bets, that, okay, this is the segment that I'm focusing on. This is the kind of, sector that I would like to see. This is the business model that I would have. Your take on that?
Yeah, sure. So, as far as growth in the business or growth in the market, you've already addressed that with the segmented addressable market being about 4.3 billion. So if you look at our business, which is productive use segments, and if you remove households, we're still at about 3.5 billion. That's a huge market. The challenge is, why is there low DRE appliance ownership rates, right? And how do we grow that? So I think a lot of the earlier speakers have addressed some of these, but I think the two most immediate ones are the low customer density and the high acquisition rate of the consumer. So again, for this market to grow, we need to overcome the low consumer density and high acquisition costs through demand aggregation. So if we go to market with a direct retail sales channel, we will acquire customers, but a cost higher than our gross margin. We will most certainly lose money. So the idea is to partner with several last mile businesses, where they could be dairies, they could be a company like a soft drink or beverage manufacturer, they could be veterinary pharma companies, someone who already has that captive customer base and has aggregated demand. There are other platforms available, like say Sustain Plus, that are incredibly helpful to overcome this low consumer density issue. The other one is financing. And again, I don't want to beat the drum on financing too much, but there are a lot of reasons for financing not being available. I think Tanya and Huda have covered that. But what we see when we go to a financer to provide EMIs for our products is a lack of awareness. So when we talk about lack of consumer awareness, we're also talking about lack of financiers awareness. So I start by talking about what a solar refrigerator is, compare it to a AC versus DC refrigerator, explain the benefits. And then, we have to look back at what the incremental income generated from the productive use appliance. There is one helpful report from March 2019, which is a Selco Foundation report that shows about 7,000 rupees a month of incremental income from a solar refrigerator. We go back to our financiers and say, look, your EMI has to be, well within that incremental income for this to be workable. The financer has constraints. They can't take the loan longer than a year. They may have certain down payment restrictions, etc. So growth in the sector is happening. There are people who know how to make it happen, like the demand aggregators, like the financiers. And in fact, we're incubated by Powering Livelihoods, and Shell Foundation has funded them. One of the ways to overcome this obstacle of financing is a first loss default guarantee. And we're fortunate enough to have a first loss default guarantee tranche as part of our incubation program. And we're going to be implementing this with financiers as this goes by. So with that, yeah, over to you, sir.
Yeah, so I think you answered a couple of questions that I had for the next round, but I have a separate question for that. And before I move to the next round of questions, we are running a bit late on the time. So can I get two questions, question number 3 and question number 4 on the screen for audience? And I move to the next round of questions. And Laura, once you get the responses to that, also display the responses while I kind of draw from panel. So Tushar, I think the point that you made, I'm going to start the next round of questions with you. The follow-up question that you just said about that, about the financing or the first loss guarantee. do you have any kind of wish list that say, okay, in order to achieve that market growth, in order to kind of capture that market, financing can be one challenge, but as a manufacturer, as an entrepreneur, what are the things that you see that, okay, these things are priority and these are the possible ways or possible stakeholder who can do that? So a quick remark. I think while you mentioned that, I know that partially you answered that question on the financing that you'll require a first loss guarantee, but is that all or you require more support there?
No, there's several steps to get to financing, and one of them I think is just having a set of established impact metrics. There's established impact metrics for lighting and other things. We need established impact metrics for off-grid refrigeration. If I get that, I can go to a financer and say, look, this is the change we're making. This is the social impact. Are you interested? Right now, without that, that's a challenge. The second one is to just keep doing a lot of field trials to show that the appliance is robust, that it has typically this 3 to 5 year life or longer that we're claiming, because financiers again would be constrained by warranty, ability to service, breakdowns, etc. Again, there's financier awareness needs to be built up. So those were the 2 points I would say definitely need to be done before we go to end user financing. And then once we get to end user financing, that's when we talk about things like FLDG and interest subventions and consumer subsidies, etc.
Thanks, Tushar. I think they are very valuable suggestions. Huda, coming back to the same question, but looking at the policy side, in order to kind of take this market forward, what do you see is the policy landscape or policy measures that can drive the sector?
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. Like one of the main challenges, yes, it is financing and, unlocking schemes and policies to actually facilitate the uptake of these solutions. But I think two things, just commenting on what has been said before is one is, investment in human resources and training and capacity building of human resources that are actually doing the lead generation on the ground. They're actually proving the value proposition, like who's actually convincing that end user on the ground, going to that bank, showing the value proposition, showing that sort of that is really the most essential. So very often we always find, bankers may be ready, MFIs may be ready, but then the demand side also has to be, aligned at the same time, that the ability to actually convert those, those leads and to generate those leads and to really kind of scale so that companies like Devidayal and others can actually have a consistent kind of scaling mechanism and planning mechanism. One of the things that we also see is a lot of the schemes and policies that have been unlocked, especially from an agri-cold storage perspective for agri-cold rooms, agri-cold storages, many of them are actually not situated in the right place. Many of them are being severely underutilized, just 10%, 20% utilization. And this is where we feel that, along with, focusing on unlocking financing and on unlocking schemes and policies that are conducive to enable them to scale, training of stakeholders to actually figure out how and where and when should a cold storage be implemented, what kind, short-term, long-term, multi-chamber, single-chamber, for which kind of commodity, and how do you use it, how do you actually build a business model around it, proving that value proposition actually becomes very critical. And just to give you an example, there is an we're trying to unlock, or we've unlocked a certain, ITDA scheme, the Tribal Empowerment and Development Scheme for cold storage units. Now, who is identifying the sites? Who is actually identifying the ownership? It's actually people that don't know much about it, so, and you cannot even blame anybody in this. I think it's just a program design mechanism where if you are, unlocking a certain program for cold storage, it needs to be complemented with, actual capacity building of stakeholders to who can actually figure out where these need to be established, what scale of these need to be established, what is the value proposition there and the ownership model there to actually ensure that these are used and maximized. The two, three things that I talk on the policy side, one is definitely, allocating that 2 to 3% on asset finance. Overall, I think livelihoods, and specifically from a cooling perspective, it would really benefit from a RRB's perspective. We still believe that there is a lot of scope there, which is going really underutilized. Using schemes like Mudra, housing schemes on asset-based and unlocking those for financing. Of course, a lot of the other inter-department schemes which already exist, like one of them is the Agriculture Infrastructure Development Fund. One of them is the Tribal Empowerment, the Horticulture Funds. There are very specific monies that really can be unlocked for infrastructure support, especially for last mile communities, because these are not communities that would be able to repay it within 3 to 5 years. These are communities that not only need 100% infrastructure support, but would also need an HR support for the first 6 months to 1 year to really aggregate true value proposition and then enable it to actually be utilized and operationally sustainable, right? So, it's not one model and one scheme, but actually it is kind of a typology based need which exists from a policy perspective. And just like how this whole discussion is more around the agri, just like that, I think the animal husbandry, the vaccine, it needs a different kind of attention to actually unlock relevant schemes from a cooling perspective.
Thanks for that. That's quite insightful. But there is a question that I want to put to Richa, which might draw something from what Huda says, is that we need to communicate the value offering, the value proposition of these technology different stakeholders. While economic value offering, I think there are a number of ways we communicate to that. Is there a way to kind of increase the demand, create awareness about the environmental benefits or the impact that it has, on the other side, being a very clean source of energy? So Richa, your take on, is there a way to communicate the environmental benefits of this whole technology to the stakeholders so that we can create more, conducive environment around the whole segment?
Certainly, Santosh, and that's a very useful question because there are a few different ways, and we've been trying to think about this, a little holistically. And one obvious way is obviously through labels and standards, but we are a little far away from that. However, certain voluntary standards could certainly be proposed as and when we come to that stage. We're just going to publish in a couple of weeks or less a report on refrigerant emissions on refrigerators. And one of the recommendations, we've proposed there is that currently most manufacturers, the very small fraction of DC or refrigerator manufacturers, even cold room manufacturers who are or service providers who publish information on their website on what refrigerant they are using. And some that they publish, there is absolutely no information on how many grams or kilograms of refrigerant is being used, and that is the basic information you need to compute emissions from refrigerants. So one way is for large PQ like WHO PQS or other procurement programs for donors investors is to ask or insist that they need to be the least environmentally harmful based refrigerants. Another way that we are certainly trying to do at the layer level is a lot of you might be familiar with the GOGLA impact metrics for solar lanterns in systems. We're developing something similar, but a much more holistic and bigger framework on 4 different appliances, which includes refrigerators. And it will propose many different types of impact metrics, including environmental indicators, and we'll be working with different industry stakeholders to adopt them and harmonize them. So that impact reporting will make things a lot of transparent. And we also have an arrangement with GOGLA via the GOGLA sales data collection. You would have seen those biannual reports where we report sales of appliances around the globe, and as part of that we will publish those impact metrics and some of those indicators.
Great. So I'm just kind of keeping track of time. So I'm just going to draw 2 quick responses from Siddharth. Siddharth, we heard about the kind of ecosystem level challenges in awareness. Is there anything that you want to add to the implementation side of the thing? When you look at implementing these solutions on the ground, suppose if you have the financing available, you have the technology available, are there any other challenges that you see that are bottlenecks? Any insight on the ground implementation?
Right. So yes, definitely. See, even the finance and the technology available, you should have a right, I'll say, ecosystem available to deploy this solution. So I think Huda briefly touched upon the point that even though you deployed the cold storage, it is hardly being used because maybe there was no, I'll say, appropriate, or the site, it might be not designed appropriately. So I will just want to say that there could be multiple scenarios, there could be multiple stages, I will say that geography is, and you need to identify whether what is this geography or what is this target beneficiaries or community is at what level, and then you need to offer the solution accordingly, and whether there are some supporting or I'll say complementary solution, I'll say things which is also required to make that thing viable and feasible, if these are present or not. So also just want to briefly touch upon that, with the support of Shell and Zintio, we have launched a framework called Stages of Development, where we actually play with different themes which is available in the current situation, and then try to analyze that which kind of solution and what are the different financing model is actually helpful in doing the, I'll say, implementation in those geographies. So I'll put up a link here also after the event, but I think this is the, I'll say, having a proper information about the ecosystem that will help you scale up easily in those geographies.
Great. Tanya, I just wanted to have the same question to you, because you have been looking at supporting these initiatives and building the ecosystem. So a lot of focus on financing, supporting enterprises, and addressing other challenges in the ecosystem. But anything that, as I'm kind of Siddharth mentioned about your partnership with Jintio that is working on that, do you see any other challenges here which could be something that we are missing in terms of scaling up the market?
As I think the biggest challenge, as I mentioned, is on partnerships, that like different players need to come together. So Huda has also mentioned, Siddharth has also mentioned, so grassroots organizations and last mile organizations, which are actually connected to the customer for demand aggregation, with the off-takers for whom, or the final customers for whom the value is being created through cold storage. So in agriculture, if horticulture producers getting is benefiting from the quality due to cold storage, who is getting the value addition, they need to be a part of this partnership, as well as the technology organization. So I do think there is need of different players in this. There are a few innovative business models that we are now seeing. Obviously cooling as a service has been mentioned, but I think there needs to be more investment into testing that at a certain scale and proving it for different funders that that model can scale. There is also another recent portfolio addition called Keep It Cool that we have supported in Kenya, which is actually integrating cooling plus market linkage into their solution. So the product isn't there; they have just modified a refrigeration solution, but the innovation is in the business model, where they are providing timely on-demand fisheries. So they're in the fisheries value chain, and they're providing timely produce to restaurants and retailers, which is increasing their income, and hence the upfront capital cost is getting covered by these players, and not necessarily by the fisher folk. So I think there need to be more focus on investment in business model innovation, as well as creating of partnerships with different organizations.
Great. I think the partnership I take as one of the key thing that GOGLA can also engage in. Being the industry body, they can bring the different partners together and kind of take the journey forward. As I'm running out of time, I would request Laura to put another audience question. And then Tanya, thanks for keeping a plug for the two questions that I had. Cooling as a service came at the top, and business model innovation was also one of the top responses. While audience put the question, I am kind of opening the floor for question answer from the audience as well. So you can type the questions, and I would take it to the respective panelists. Huda is not there. I think Huda had to drop off, so Huda has dropped off. But we can surely get your questions to other panelists. So feel free to put the questions, and then I can get to the panelists that you want to get the question answered from. Any question from audience? Kavya, Ankit, is there somebody who is going to compile the questions?
Santosh, whatever the questions were, we tried of answered it during the chat process. But other than that, there's no major questions for.
Yeah, I was saying that the chat box was quite active. So my panelists were also participating. So it's not that they have not been tracking. That's why I was taking a bit more time. But the chat box in front of me is quite, engaging. So if the questions are not yet covered in the chat box, or you want to kind of get a particular panelist to respond to, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I would request a very brief response, one-line response from each of the panelists, that in order to make the sector move forward, what do you think that one thing, if you see that audience has come up and highlighted that what GOGLA should be, or agency like GOGLA should be putting on that, and it's say that partnership with financial institution, again, the finance being the theme that has come up across. But I want to kind of put a very quick, if you can give me a 3 to 4 word response, that would be great before I move on to the next segment. Even in the financing, what do you think the GOGLA can do? What do you think that one thing that GOGLA should take up and kind of focus on that? There are multiple things that they can do in financing, but what is the critical thing in financing or creating awareness that they can do? One line from each, starting with Tanya.
I think more evidence on the impact of cooling solutions, not just the environmental impact, but also financial impact for different stakeholders. That is something that information can be made
So
available by
showcase the
GOGLA.
benefit of the cooling, DRE-based cooling to the sector, to stakeholders.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Siddharth, what would be one thing that you want GOGLA or any industry body to kind of focus on?
I'll say some amount of risk capital in the ecosystem so that the technology can speed up, and then multiple players in the ecosystem can adopt it and take it forward.
Okay. So risk capital, I think GOGLA can partner with other stakeholders to bring together the risk capital instrument. Richa, what could be the one thing that GOGLA or an association like GOGLA who's focusing on the sector should focus on?
Tanya kind of took my answer on impact, so I'd add taxes, import duties, and tariffs.
Okay, so some bit of policy advocacy to kind of make the policy environment conducive to this. Tushar.
I would say generate quantitative data on a large sample to quantify the income generation potential and payback.
So quantitative data on the economic benefit of the technology, right? So
Right.
primarily to get the financial institution and other stakeholder to be convinced about that, right? That's the right way of phrasing it.
That's right.
Anyone having question to panelists? I'm keeping a track of the discussion on the chat box. Tanya and Kavya, anyone has any question that I have a specific for any panelist?
Yes, Santosh, we do have one question from Jeremy, which states that what platforms exist for suppliers and developers of cooling solutions to share experience and jointly address challenges as well as work with the governments?
Is there any platform, any of panelists, do you have a focus on building such kind of platform, or are you aware of the platform where suppliers can share information or solutions? I take that as a no. Tushar?
Yeah, just I'm saying a physical platform, but Sustain Plus is a platform which can provide a link between suppliers and I'll say the users. Again, we are recently launched for 2 years, so not very extensive, but yeah, Sustain Plus is launched as a platform for bringing different partners together, as well as sharing knowledge and resources.
So probably you can also work on a platform that brings together all the solutions. People can go and kind of look at the different kind of options. Great.
Right.
So I think while we go to the next segment and the chat box is still open for the questions, but before I kind of move on next, let me thank my panelists for very, very engaging discussion. I could see that you have been participating in the chat box, answer the question very insightfully, and for us, a lot of challenges that we have highlighted in the report or we got from the field also got validated to some extent. So we're looking forward for your continued engagement in this space. And on behalf of GOGLA Intellecap, we thank you for your time and we look forward for your comment and suggestions on the report and accept our gratitude for providing all the information. We know that Intellecap team has been chasing many of you to get the information, but ultimately we got the information to good use. Hopefully that is beneficial for you. Now, in the last segment of this thing, let me invite Mr. Venkat Rajaraman, who is the chairperson for India Working Group of GOGLA, to come and give a concluding remark. Over to you, Venkat.
Hey, thank you, Santosh. It was a wonderful panel discussion. I think we are in the concluding part of this event. This is my time to express gratitude to all of you. I think you guys have done a wonderful job, and I thank the audience for taking time to participate in this report launch. Though it is an India-specific report, there's been a global audience. I thank the Indian Chamber of Commerce for supporting this GOGLA event and the report. Of course, immense thanks to Sri J.K. Jethani from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy for his keynote address. Of course, this panel discussion has been very lively. I thank Richa, Huda, Tushar, Siddharth, and Tanya. Santosh, thank you for moderating this session. Fantastic. And Ankit, thank you for sharing your key insights from the report. Of course, as as Santosh pointed out, this was possible only with immense amount of interaction that we had with industry colleagues, and their inputs and feedback. For several discussions was all sort of included as part of this report. Not but not the least, Praveen and Lara from GOGLA had done a wonderfully, coordinating this event. Over to Koen, for his concluding remarks.
Yep, thank you very much, Venkat. Can you hear me?
Yes, Koen, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Venkat, for that round of thank you and close up. I only want to say thank you also to Venkat, Santosh, all the panelists, to Mr. Jaitani, and to my colleagues Praveen and Laura for organizing this this webinar. I've been listening with great interest. I've been looking at a very lively discussion in the chat box. I hope this has been helpful for everyone joining to think further on what's next in delivering energy services in India, but also on how can Indian innovation and business spirit help to provide energy access across the planet. This was the second of our reports this year. The previous one was on AC/DC hybrid structures. Please visit our website to look back if you want to find some more information. And let me point out that we are also organizing a virtual version of the IDEF event, a distributed energy forum, to convene everyone and provide showcases for technology, which will take place in April. Please keep an eye on our website and our newsletter to stay in touch. With that, thank you all. It was a very interesting and lively event, and I hope it will help everyone to proceed in the market. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, everyone.
Thanks, and bye. Let's close.
Thank you.